Hunter sat down and asked, How? How did you harness elemental power? Laura turned and reached into the furnace. She pulled out a small gray burlap sack that was tied closed by a piece of twine. He opened the bag and emptied its contents out on the ground before him. The sack contained a pair of talons, snakeskin, and the skeletal remains of a fish. Me and Tatiana used our elven magic to infuse the elemental attributes of those items into the gems in your belt and bracers. He picked up the talons and inspected it. What about the talons? He asked. Laura let out a sigh and sat down. She reached out and took the talons from his hand. This I used to infuse the element of air into I forget what. She placed the talons back on the ground. Now, since you are here, let's get started. Quick like a rabbit, she jumped into a standing position. Hunter looked at her with confusion. What are you talking about? She smiled. I'm talking about me making you a weapon for your journey. Anything you want. He reached into his pockets and removed the golden eyeball. And he untied the string. He reached out and placed the items into her hands. Dealer's choice. She nodded and placed the items on top of the barrel. Laura pointed toward the door. You wait outside. I work better alone. Hunter stood up, bowed his head slightly, and exited out of her workshop. He walked to the edge of the cliff and sat down. He placed his hands on his knees, closed his eyes, and started to meditate. A few hours later, Laura stepped out of the workshop with a burlap wrapped up and tied with twine. He stood up and walked over. So how much do I owe you? Laura shook her head. It's on the house. I want to help you in your mission. Laura reached out with her left hand and grabbed Hunter's wrist and placed the wrapped item in his hands. Hunter nodded and carefully removed the twine and burlap to reveal a pair of golden grappling gloves. Both of the gloves had an ink symbol etched onto the metal surface. So what do you think? She asked, as she smiled and wanted Hunter to look over the gloves. Hunter stepped back and took a knee to her. Thank you. Laura chuckled lightly. No thanks needed. Now on the other side of my cabin. A few yards out are some giant walls that lead to the troll's castle. Hunter stood up, shook Laura's hand, and then took off toward the shack in a sprint. With a single bound, he cleared 100 yards in 2 seconds. He landed on the ground in a barrel roll and sprung to his feet in front of a giant set of oak wood doors that were flanked by giant white walls. Different images of trolls of unusual sizes and shapes danced around images of people tied to poles with pain and anguish on their faces. Halt! Yelled out 2 high-pitched voices. The ground in front of the doors started to crumble apart, and a long, 2-headed green snake-like creature crawled out of the hole on 8 giant spider legs.